Now, the U.S. president says that he has directed his administration to begin the process of removing Hong Kong's special status in response to a security bill ratified by the Chinese parliament. Donald Trump accused China of breaking its word over Hong Kong's autonomy. Under a policy act, U.S. has been treating the region as separate from China on a host of issues, including commerce. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says that Hong Kong no longer warrants such treatment, which has enabled it to remain a global financial hub. On Thursday, the Chinese parliament passed a bill on improving the legal system and enforcement mechanisms in Hong Kong. Beijing has warned Western governments to stay out of its internal affairs, vowing countermeasures against any U.S. action on this issue. And now joining us for this news review is Tony Gossling, investigative journalist from Bristol, and Jason Unruhe, political commentator, joining us out of Ontario. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program. Guess we'll start here and jump the pond in a short second with you, Tony Gossling out of Bristol. Your thoughts on the story, please.
Well, I mean, it might sound bizarre, but Jason probably knows a little bit more about, I think, one of the main things which could help this situation, and that is the house arrest in Vancouver of Meng Wanzhou. She's the chief financial officer of Huawei, and she is, basically her arrest by Canada was one of the things that sparked this whole conflict, because the Chinese reacted by trying to have an extradition treaty from Hong Kong into mainland China as a result of this. Now, she's been under house arrest now for 18 months over in Canada. And I think if Donald Trump actually really wants to help people in Hong Kong, the best thing he could do would be to arrest her, de-arrest her and let her go, and order the Canadians to do so and stop the extradition proceedings to the United States from Canada.
Jason, pleasure to have you on the program. We're going to start to get your initial thoughts. Basically, I want to know, so Trump is to end this Hong Kong's preferential treatment that it gets in trade and travel by targeting Hong Kong's financial hub and the advantages it gets, because out of spite to a bill that was passed against Hong Kong in his narrative out of Beijing. Tell me how that makes sense.
I think what they're very much trying to do here is deliberately hurt Hong Kong's financial situation. I mean, this doesn't sound much different than many of the regime change strategies that we've seen in the past. Outright putting sanctions against Hong Kong wouldn't make any sense, because they're trying to portray Hong Kong as the victim in this case. I think that what we're definitely seeing here is the United States trying to undermine the Chinese effort to shore up its own stability in the area. I mean, frankly, no country in the world is simply going to allow some secessionist movement to take place, whether that be a valid one or an invalid one in this case. I think this is a very specific move by the United States to cause a further destabilization in society. Once the financial sector takes a hit, then obviously the industrial sector is next, then the service economy, et cetera, and you have like a sliding slope of damage that's being done to the country. This will create unrest. This will take those who are already angry and will hopefully spur on more protests inside the country. So it's kind of like a new take on the regime change strategy, where you're actually defending the place that you're trying to make the change in, rather than outright try to destroy it. That's the way that I see this taking place right now.
Thank you, Jason. And Tony, do you get the issue that I have with this? I want you to tell me or understand Donald Trump's approach on this, his narrative. He's telling Beijing, I don't like what you're doing is hurting Hong Kong. I don't like it, so I'm going to hurt Hong Kong too.
Yes, absolutely right. And the only reason I mentioned Vancouver and Meng Wanzhou is because we're looking for ways to unwind this tension. Trump seems to be doing the absolute opposite. Let's wind it up a little bit more. I don't actually necessarily think this is Trump's policy. Pompeo, he seems to be in charge really of these foreign policy moves, and he's got a very strong group of advisors basically telling Trump what to do. Trump has outsourced foreign policy to Pompeo. Whilst he may on paper have a veto, Pompeo has got a lot of cards to play, a lot of very powerful lobbying people behind him. But the special treatment for Hong Kong, well, this should continue. Of course it should. All the time that we're in this situation, and I have to say that the laws that China are imposing on Hong Kong are likely to be very counterproductive. I mean, particularly taking away people's freedoms. You've got a serious point. The Chinese Communist Party is actually trying to paint itself as almost a kind of a religion that you're not to question. And this is something that we're just simply not used to in the West. The Hong Kongers are scared. They are really frightened right now about this kind of imposition. So we need to look at ways of winding down the tension, not Trump.
I don't think you could hear us, but your voice is coming in really choppy. We're going to see if we can get that fixed. I'm going to swing over to you now, Jason, and talk to you for a second while we try to get Tony's connection there somewhat steady. So basically, Jason, I mean, so the issue at hand here is with Beijing, really, and not with Hong Kong. Obviously, Trump, I don't know if it's to appease his base, but what is your perception on this? How do you interpret the beef he's had with Beijing since he's coming into office, and it's only intensified since COVID-19?
Well, the way I definitely see this is that we're looking at a very serious decline of the U.S. empire. There is very clearly a great deal of social unrest, particularly right now with the protests. The country is more politically polarized than it has been in a very long time. They're well aware that there's a looming economic crisis right around the corner. Many of the U.S. strategies for regime change and imperialist domination in the Middle East and Latin America are failing. I think that the U.S. empire sees itself on the very verge of having a major collapse, and this is they're attempting to strike out at their main competitor, which is China, which has had, other than the large bump that is COVID-19, they've been on a very steady rise for a great deal of time, and it has become very clear that China is going to replace the United States as the world leader, like the main economy that's going to be in charge of the world. So I think that this is something that has been building for a long time, but something that has become accelerated under the leadership of Donald Trump, and that is the U.S. trying to maintain its hegemonic position forever, how much longer it will last. It's just this issue with Hong Kong is a weak spot for China, a plan that may actually work. And the reason they're hitting it is that it is a point of vulnerability. Thank you, Jason. And Tony, I see that we have you back. Basically, we only got about maybe 5 or 10% of what you were saying. I was trying to plead with you to hold on, but you couldn't even hear me because the connection was that bad. I was like, Tony. But go ahead, if you can, repeat everything you said.
Look, the main thing here is that we need to get Meng Wanzhou released. She's over in Vancouver under house arrest, the chief financial officer of Huawei. If Trump stops this extradition proceeding of her, then all these tensions will unwind, and that's the best way, I think, to deal with this. There should be special treatment for Hong Kong, and then the people of Hong Kong will get what they want, and the Chinese will back off. Also, this is Pompeo's policy. This is not Trump. Trump doesn't really understand foreign policy very well, and he's just outsourced this to Pompeo. Pompeo's got a very, very powerful set of lobbies, the arms industry and people like that basically tell him what to do. And so it's very difficult for Trump to push back, I think, against Pompeo and his foreign policy. But the way to unwind this is very simple. Stop the extradition proceedings of the Huawei financial officer Meng Wanzhou from Vancouver to the United States, and the Chinese will back off. That's the thing they need to do. And we need to look at ways to get out of this, not ways to wind it up even further, because we don't really want a war between the two biggest superpowers on earth, China and the United States.
Gentlemen, thank you both for showing up on the program. Enjoyed having you. Tony Gosling from Bristol and Jason Unruhe joining us there from Ontario, Canada. And viewers, that is a wrap for the segment of your Press TV's News Review. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now.